This is ASMR News. Drift off, wake up, or simply relax with the world's biggest headlines. Worldwide COVID-19 cases topped 25 million over the weekend, with India recording a record 78,761 daily cases, the highest single-day country total since the beginning of the pandemic. Previously, the United States had registered the most daily cases when it hit 77,299 on July 16th. With over 3.5 million cases, India is now third behind the US and Brazil in the total number of cases, but now has the fastest growing daily coronavirus caseload of any country in the world. France recorded 7,379 coronavirus infections on Friday, its largest daily total since the end of March. President Emmanuel Macron raised the possibility of another nationwide lockdown. Authorities in Paris and surrounding regions mandated that face coverings must be worn in all public places. Cyclists and those exercising outside will be exempt from the rule, police said, as well as children under the age of 11. Despite the sharp rise, hospital numbers and daily deaths were relatively stable, as young people less vulnerable to the disease make up most of the new infections, the ministry said. A poultry plant in California has been closed following an outbreak of cases among employees. The Foster Farms plant has seen 358 of its employees test positive at the facility, and 8 employees have died. The decision to shut down the facility was made after the State Attorney General's Office, California Department of Public Health, and the Merced County Public Health Department tried to negotiate with the company to limit the impact of the closure and could not reach an agreement. While Sunbelt states are showing signs of declines in COVID-19 infections, cases in the Midwest are beginning to increase. U.S. health officials are warning that the U.S. heartland could be vulnerable to new outbreaks. Midwestern states reporting growing cases include Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, North Dakota, Ohio, and South Dakota. Texas, Florida, California, and Arizona all reported declines greater than 15% compared with a week ago. The University of Arizona in Tucson claimed this week that it stopped a coronavirus outbreak before it started by analyzing sewage. By conducting wastewater epidemiology, the university identified 2 asymptomatic students who tested positive. Wastewater epidemiology, combined with contact tracing and swab testing, can help form an early warning system to catch COVID-19 cases in discrete groups of people. Wastewater surveillance has also been implemented in the United Kingdom and Israel. Two weeks after opening for fall classes, the University of Alabama has recorded 1,200 positive cases among students. Before returning to campus, everyone was required to take tests, and those who tested positive were not permitted to come. Those testing positive after returning to campus are either quarantined or required to self-isolate, but students said there is little monitoring or enforcement. Berlin police arrested 300 demonstrators during protests against Germany's coronavirus restrictions. The Berlin government had sought to ban the protests, but organizers successfully appealed the decision, though the court ordered them to ensure social distancing. While the protests were mostly peaceful, hundreds of protesters from the far right tried to storm the Reichstag building where the Bundestag, home of Germany's federal parliament, sits. While the protests were mainly peaceful, hundreds of protesters from the far right tried to storm the Reichstag building where the Bundestag, the home of Germany's federal parliament, sits. Some of those involved had insignia from the far-right Reichsbürger, or Reich Citizens movement. Vice Chancellor Olaf Scholz said, Nazi symbols as well as Reichsbürger and Imperial German flags have no place in the German Bundestag. Others carried flags with the QAnon symbol. Q, the anonymous founder of the conspiracy, claims to be a high-ranking U.S. military official trying to tell the world about a secret battle being waged by Donald Trump against a pedophile ring filled with a cabal of celebrities and political elites who have been covertly running the U.S. government for decades. More and more countries are allowing family visits to dying COVID-19 patients. Visits to patients have been allowed for some time in Europe and the United States, but now Latin American countries are also increasingly allowing the practice. Britain eased its rules on visiting COVID-19 patients in April after politicians and the public were horrified to hear that 13-year-old Ismail Mohammed Abdul Wahab died alone in a London hospital after contracting the virus. Germany and Spain soon followed suit, and now Brazil, Chile, and Argentina are making it possible for relatives to be with loved ones in their dying days. Remote indigenous communities in Brazil, who have little or no contact with the outside world, have accused the government of failing to protect them. Frustrated by the lack of protection for all the indigenous communities, the main representative body for the indigenous communities went to the Supreme Court to force the government to develop and implement a plan to protect the groups. The court ruled in their favor on July 18th and gave the government 10 days to present a plan of protecting remote indigenous communities. But more than 7 weeks later, no plan has been approved. Indigenous peoples are extremely sensitive to outside diseases because they haven't built up immunity. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration said it may approve a COVID-19 vaccine even before Phase 3 results are completed if the benefits outweigh the risks. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn said that such a move would not be due to pressure from the Trump administration to fast-track a vaccine. The statement came a week after the FDA granted emergency authorization of convalescent plasma to treat hospitalized COVID-19 patients, despite concerns that data from clinical trials is too weak to support widespread use. That announcement was on the heels of President Trump accusing the FDA, without any evidence, of trying to hurt him politically by dragging its feet in approving new coronavirus vaccines and treatments. Tens of thousands of demonstrators took to the streets in Belarus over the weekend, facing off against Lukashenko. Prior to the protests, Belarus revoked the press credentials of numerous foreign journalists, including those from the Associated Press, Reuters, French wire service Agence France Presse, the BBC, and Radio Liberty. Approximately 7,000 people have been arrested during the protests, which have been constant since August 9th, when President Alexander Lukashenko claimed he won the election with 80% of the vote. At least 3 people have died in the unrest. Montenegro is voting in an election that could challenge the long-standing rule of the pro-Western Democratic Party of Socialists, which has been in power for 30 years. The opposition seeks closer ties with Russia and Serbia. The campaign has been dominated by divisions over the powerful Serbian Orthodox Church, since a law was adopted in December, allowing the state to seize religious assets when their historical ownership cannot be proven. The Serbian Orthodox Church has urged people to vote against the DPS. Charité Hospital in Berlin said Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny is improving but remains in a medically induced coma. Doctors said last week that its initial medical examination pointed to poisoning. Russian doctors who treated Navalny in Serbia have contradicted that diagnosis. China added new export control rules that could jeopardize the pending sale of TikTok's U.S. operations. President Trump in early August issued an executive order banning TikTok from operating in the U.S. unless it was sold to a U.S.-based company. The president signed another order 1 week later, calling for ByteDance to divest its American assets and any data it obtained from TikTok users in the U.S. The new rules suggest that ByteDance would have to get Chinese government approval before selling the technology, and that it may have to suspend negotiations on TikTok's sale. Intelligence officials told Congress that they would no longer provide in-person briefings about election security and would rely solely on written updates instead. The chief of the Intelligence Office, John L. Ratcliffe, said the move was to crack down on leaks that have infuriated some intelligence officials. But coming just 10 weeks before Election Day, the change drew complaints from lawmakers in both parties who worried the move would block their ability to question and test intelligence assessments from the executive branch at a time when they are crucial to ensuring that foreign powers do not undermine the results. "57 years after Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at the 1963 March on Washington, thousands of protesters for racial justice again gathered on the National Mall in Washington. Organizers took care to prevent the spread of COVID-19, mandating that attendees wear a mask and doing temperature checks for anyone entering the protest area around the National Mall. One person was shot and killed late Saturday in Portland, Oregon, as groups of Trump and Black Lives Matter supporters clashed. The man who was shot and killed was wearing a hat with the insignia of Patriot Prayer, a far-right group based in Portland that has clashed with protesters in the past. President Trump will visit Kenosha, Wisconsin, which has seen widespread unrest since a black man was shot in the back and seriously injured by a policeman. as concern was growing on Sunday that a tense but peaceful situation prevailing in the city for the last 4 days and nights could be inflamed by the visit. Governor Tony Evers asked Trump to reconsider. "I am concerned your presence will only hinder our healing," Evers wrote. "I am concerned your presence will only delay our work to overcome division and move forward together." The president will meet with law enforcement officers and assess the damage from the recent protests. He has not yet said if he will meet with the family of the victim. Figures from across the French political spectrum have expressed outrage over the depiction of a black politician as an 18th century slave. The articles in Valeurs Actuelles, entitled Daniel Obono in the Age of Slavery, is a fictional account of Obono's return to 18th century Africa and contains illustrations showing the left-wing member of a National Assembly with chains around her neck. Prime Minister Jean Castex tweeted that he shared the indignation of the deputy Daniel Obono. Castex said the article warranted unambiguous condemnation. Minister for the Interior Gérald Darmanin tweeted in support in the name of the principles and values of the French Republic that should rest more than ever at the heart of our political life. The United Arab Emirates has officially ended its boycott against Israel following an announcement from President Trump earlier in the month that outlined the thawing of relations between the two countries. Ending the boycott will now allow trade and commerce between the two countries. Air travel will also resume. With the official decree, the UAE becomes the third Arab nation to have diplomatic ties with Israel, following Egypt and Jordan. A woman who tried to shoot and fight off a kidnapper was reunited with her 1-year-old boy on Saturday. The kidnapping took place around 12:30 p.m. in Chamblee, Georgia, when a car drove up to the victim as she was walking home with the baby in a stroller. The driver got out, pointed a gun, and tried to grab the boy. The mother got a hold of the gun and tried to shoot the man, but the weapon didn't fire. However, she tore a piece off the passenger's shorts and got one of his shoes. Authorities were able to identify the plate number, and police later spotted the car, took custody of the unharmed child, and arrested 2 suspects. Two Ecuadorians have just become the world's oldest married couple. Julio Mora, 110, and Waldemina Quinteros, 106, have been married for 79 years. While others have been married longer, no one else matches their combined age of 214. Both are lucid and in good health, though relatives say they're a little depressed because they miss their big family get-togethers due to the pandemic. Neuralink, Elon Musk's neuroscience startup, announced that a pig named Gertrude has had a coin-sized computer chip in its brain for 2 months late Friday in a demonstration of an advance toward the goal of curing human diseases with the same type of implant. Neuralink intends to implant wireless brain-computer interfaces to help cure neurological conditions like Alzheimer's, dementia, and spinal cord injuries, and ultimately fuse humankind with artificial intelligence. Earth's oceans may have formed directly, according to new research, challenging the idea that most of Earth's water was delivered later by asteroids and comets, which contain large amounts of ice. A French team reported in the journal Science that space rocks that were formed at the beginning of the solar system were responsible, and suggested our planet has been wet ever since. The scientists found that the ancient rocks contain more hydrogen than previously thought. Hydrogen and oxygen, when combined, form water. Colombia wants to resume aerial spraying of glyphosate in remote rural areas to stop the growth of coca, the chief ingredient in cocaine. Colombia's government claims it can be done safely, but critics argue it's dangerous and ineffective. The World Health Organization has linked it to cancer and classified it as probably carcinogenic to humans. The spraying was stopped in 2015, but current President Raly Aug, with prodding from U.S. President Donald Trump, has requested permission from Colombia's Environmental Licenses Authority. Colombia produces about 70% of the world's cocaine, and the government says eradicating coca crops will limit trafficking and violence by drug gangs, which it has blamed for 7 massacres in August that killed 36 people, including several children. Tens of thousands of people protested in Mauritius over the government's slow response to an oil spill from a grounded Japanese ship and the discovery of 39 dead dolphins in recent days. Public demonstrations aren't common in Mauritius, but one of the things that really binds people together is the sea, he said. It's one of the jewels of this country, and everyone feels very passionately about this. Mauritius depends heavily on tourism, and the spill has been a severe blow on top of the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, which has limited international travel. Chad Boseman, who played Marvel's Black Panther, as well as icons Jackie Robinson and James Brown, died Friday of cancer. He was 43. Boseman was diagnosed with colon cancer 4 years ago, but continued to film movies while undergoing numerous surgeries. Former U.S. President Barack Obama paid tribute to Boseman, tweeting, "Chadwick came to the White House to work with kids when he was playing Jackie Robinson," referring to the 2013 film 42. You could tell right away that he was blessed. To be young, gifted, and black, to use that power to give them heroes to look up to do it all while in pain. What a use of his years. Racing driver Lewis Hamilton dedicated his pole position at the Belgian Grand Prix to Boseman, tweeting, "He's inspired a whole generation of young black men and women and provided them with a true superhero to look up to. Rest in power, my friend." Congolese doctor Denis Mukwege, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work treating war rape victims, has received numerous death threats against both himself and his family via both phone and social media. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet said his life seems to be at serious risk and called for an investigation. Congo's government is officially responsible for Mukwege's protection, although the UN peacekeeping mission in the country also provides some. However, questions remain about the quality of his protection. A truck driver from Northern Ireland pleaded guilty to manslaughter in the deaths of 39 Vietnamese last year in southeastern England. The victims were found in the back of a truck in an industrial park in the English town of Grays. 2 of the dead were only 15, while the oldest was 44. The driver also pleaded guilty to conspiracy to assist unlawful immigration of non-European Union citizens in 2018 and 2019. triggered by accusations that European nations were ignoring maritime distress calls, hundreds of migrants were transferred to several rescue ships on Saturday from a ship that had become stranded in the Mediterranean. The Louise Michel, with a crew of 10, set out on Thursday to help 89 people on a rubber dinghy. During its mission, it came across another ship with about 130 people who were also rescued. At that point, with more than 200 people aboard, the Louise Michel's crew of 10 could no longer steer the ship and issued a distress call. But the response was slow, and British street artist Banksy accused European officials of ignoring maritime distress calls from non-Europeans after he helped fund a rescue vessel to deliver humanitarian aid to migrants who have been stranded in the central Mediterranean for days. A French woman making a nude video of herself in India to promote her jewelry business was arrested in India after she posted it on social media. The woman faces charges under India's internet law and could be sentenced to up to 3 years in prison. She admitted to posting the video, but claimed she was unaware it was illegal to do so in India. In the NBA, 6 teams have advanced to the second round. The Los Angeles Lakers beat the Portland Trail Blazers, and the Milwaukee Bucks beat the Orlando Magic by 4 games to 1. The Los Angeles Clippers beat the Dallas Mavericks by 4 games to 2. Advancing by sweeping their opposition 4 games to 0 are the Miami Heat over the Indiana Pacers, the Boston Celtics over the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Toronto Raptors over the Brooklyn Nets. The Heat will meet the Bucks, and the Celtics will play the Raptors in the second round. In the remaining first-round games, the Houston Rockets lead the Oklahoma City Thunder 3 games to 2, and the Denver Nuggets and the Utah Jazz are tied at 3 games apiece. Novak Djokovic has resigned as president of the ATP Player Council to form a union to increase the power of professional tennis players. However, Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer oppose his action. Britain's Andy Murray refused to join the new Professional Tennis Players Association because it is male only. "I'm not totally against a player union," he said, "but I feel like the current management that are in place should be given some time to implement their vision, and I feel like that would send a much more powerful message if the WTA were on board with it as well." In a match that pretty much nobody but die-hard fans cared about, Arsenal beat Liverpool 5-4 on penalties to win the Football Association Community Shield after the game finished 1-1 on Saturday. The match is English football's annual match between the champions of the previous Premier League season and the holders of the FA Cup. Arsenal, who finished 8th in the Premier League, now has bragging rights at least until the start of next season on September 12th. This is a